you is we're going to talk about equations of circles. So if we were to graph the circle on the coordinate plane, we want to come up with the equation of the circle. Okay, so we're going to do it a couple of different ways. So first of all, the equation of the circle is written like this. The quantity of x minus h squared plus y minus k squared equals the radius squared. Okay, this should look kind of familiar with the x, y's, h, and k's. Because you remember you did this with parabolas. Remember how they had the vertex of the parabola was usually called h and k? The coordinate of the vertex was hk. You kind of remember that? That's a flashback here to Algebra 2. Right. It's been a while. Well, for us, because it's a circle, hk is the center, r is the radius. Okay, so hk, that's the x and y coordinate of the center, and then r is the radius. Okay, key thing here is this is a minus sign here, so it's going to be the opposite of h, the opposite of k. Right? Does this formula look familiar at all? Kind of looks like Pythagorean theorem, right? Which is what the distance formula is based on. Remember how we did that towards a long time ago, first beginning of the year? So if I took the square root, you don't have to do this, so don't do this. This really is the distance, which is the distance from, it's represented the distance from the center of the circle to any point on the circle. Okay, so that's where this formula is based from. Okay, so it's really very simple. After you know the formula, it's very, very straightforward. So the x and the y stay as an x and y, just like when you have an equation of a line. Y equals 2x plus 7. You have an x and a y in your equation, right? We're going to keep an x and y as well. We really want to focus on the center, our h and k, and the radius. So my center is going to be, remember, because it's the opposite of h and the opposite of k, where's my center going to lie? At 3, 4. So the center is at 3, 4. And my radius, this is, remember, you have to remember 49 is r squared. So what is the length of the radius? I'm going to take the square root of that, so it's going to be 7. Now, normally when we take square roots, we think about the positive and negative root. But can we have a negative 7 radius? No, so we don't have to worry about the negative root. We only have to worry about the positive root. All right, that's it. That's all there is to it. In terms of just looking at the equation and finding the center and the length of the radius. So how about up here? On your own, find the center, find the length of the radius. All right, so where's the center? Negative 2, 5. And what's the length of my radius? It's going to be 6. All right, so now let's reverse that and write the equations. Okay, so now I'm going to give you the center. So the center is at 1, negative 2, and we have a radius of 8. So we're going to write our equation. So remember, our first parenthesis is going to be x, and when I want the opposite of h. So it's going to be minus 1, that quantity squared, plus, now let's take care of the y, I want the opposite of k, plus 2, that quantity squared, equals my radius squared, 64. All right, so actually writing the equation is pretty straightforward. If you know the center, you know the length of the radius, it's straightforward. Sometimes, though, we're given, well, this is called standard form. Sometimes, though, it's given to us in what's called general form. Meaning, this is a binomial squared, this is a binomial squared, right? We could have, like back here, we could have multiplied this all out. We could have distributed this, we could have distributed it over here, added them all together, got everything on one side. That's what general form is. So what we're going to work on next is, if I'm given a circle in general form, I want to write it in standard form, meaning with the sets of parentheses, and I want to know the center and the radius. What happens here is it involves completing the square. We complete the square twice. Okay. So here's where we're kind of going from. Right now, we're going to be taking a trinomial, and we want to write it as a binomial square. Okay, so kind of thinking back to algebra 2 here. I know it's been a little while. If you know the first two terms, remember we can find that third term. That's what the completing the square is. Right? So if I want to find the third term, so I want to complete this trinomial to make it so then I can write it as a binomial square. Remember this c here is b divided by 2 squared. The b term is what's in front of the x. Okay, so if I take 12 divided by 2, I get 6. And 6 squared gives me 36. So that's my trinomial, right? If I'm completing the square. Because that would allow me to write it as a binomial square. So my variable is x, right? So what times itself gives me 36 to add stuff to be 12? 6. Okay, so right now I'm just trying to review with you completing the square because we're going to use it a lot. So we took b divided by 2, which gave us 6. We square it, we got 36. That allowed us to take this trinomial and write it as a binomial square. Let's do it again. So let's complete the square. I give you y squared plus 28y. So I want to figure out what that third term is. So I want to take 28 divided by 2 and then square it. 14 squared gives me 196. So let's write this as a binomial square. So that would be x, or y, sorry, y. So think about what did I square? What number did I square? A positive 14. So it's going to be plus 14. Squared. Okay, so now we're going to kind of put this together. We're going to be completing the square twice. Once for our x terms, once for our y terms. Okay? I wrote out the steps for you, but I'm going to talk you through that here. Okay, so I'm going to talk you through it all. So here we go. We have an equation written in general form. The first thing I want to do is I want to rearrange things. I want my x's together, I want my y's together, and I want my constant on the right-hand side. Because remember, we always have the radius squared on the right-hand side. So I want to rearrange. But I'm also going to leave some spaces because I know I'm going to complete the square. So I'm going to write it, I'm going to have x squared. Then I have my plus 4x, so I have my x's together. I'm going to leave a space because I'm going to complete the square in a minute. Then I'm going to have my y squared. I'm going to have my 8y. I want to leave a space because I'm going to complete the square. And now I need to take my constant to the other side because that's going to be part of my radius. Not the whole radius, it's going to be part of it. So if I take the 3 to the other side, it's going to become negative 3. Okay, so all I've done so far is just rearranged. Got my x's together, left a space. Got my y's together, left a space. And then I got my constant to the other side. All right, so now I'm going to just focus on my x's. I want to complete the square for my x's. So if I take 4 divided by 2, gives me 2. Square it, I get 4. So if I add 4 here, that would complete the square for my x's, right? But keep in mind, this is an equation. If I add 4 to the left, I've got to add 4 to the right. Now I'm going to repeat that process for the y's. So take my b value, divided by 2, gives me 4. 4 squared is 16. So I'm going to add 16 to both the left and the right side to keep it balanced, right? Okay, now we're going to factor each section. So I'm going to factor this first trinomial. Sometimes people do the factoring right away because they remember 4 divided by 2 is 2. So I can just add 2, square it, right? The quantity of x plus 2 squared. Okay, now we can do the y's. Let's take care of the y's. What's that parenthesis going to look like? Y plus 4, that quantity squared. And now I can clean up the right-hand side as well. So negative 3 plus 4 is 1, plus 16 gives me 17. Okay, now this is something I know what to do with, right? It's written in standard form, but let's take it one step further. Where's the center of my circle? At negative 2, negative 4. And the length of my radius, you can just write it as the square root of 17. I'm good with the square root of 17. Now if you do decimal, it's just easier to leave it as the square root of 17. Less work, less thinking. So that completing the square twice, it doesn't take very long. It seems like really complicated at first, and it's just not. If you break it down little bit by little bit. All right, so let's do that again. Let's do it again here. So let's rearrange first. I'm going to rearrange so I have my x's together, leave a space, put my y's together, leave a space. And this time I got to move 21 over, so it's going to become negative 21. Are we good so far? Good. Okay, so we take my b value divided by 2, I get negative 6. What's a negative 6 squared? 36. So I need to add 36 to both sides. Okay, how about my y's? So negative 2 divided by 2 gives me negative 1. Negative 1 squared is 1, so add 1 to both sides. Is that okay with everyone? Yes. Say that again. Wait, why did you square it? Because we always say b divided by 2 and square it to get that third term. Are you okay now? Yeah. Okay. All right, so let's think about our x's. Let's factor that. So keep in mind, b divided by 2 gave us what value? Negative 6. So it's going to be x minus 6. That quantity squared. Plus, let's take care of our y's. So what value did we square? 1. Negative 1. It's going to be y minus 1. That quantity squared. Equals, if I clean up the right-hand side, I'm going to have 16. Okay, so where's the center of my circle? 6, 1. Yep. Positive 6, positive 1. And what's the length of my radius? 4. Is that okay? All right. Why don't you try this one on your own? I'm going to give you about 2 minutes, 3 minutes here, and we'll go over that one. Would anyone like more time? All right, so I rearranged it. I had x squared minus 6x. If I take that and divide by 2 and square it, I'm going to get 9. Right, so I know I need to add 9 to both sides. Then I did my y's. I had y squared plus 8y. Divide that by 2 squared, I get 16. I need to add 16 to both sides. So when I factored my x's, I had x minus 3 squared, that quantity squared, plus my y is going to be y plus 4, that quantity squared, equals 25. So where's our center? 3, negative 4, and my radius is 5. We're going to skip the last problems for today, just because we're kind of short on time with the 2-hour delay. Okay, so for your homework, it's on Delta Math. There's going to be some where you're just coming up with where the center is or where the radius is. Some are going to be written in general form, and you have to figure out the center of the radius. Okay? There's 2 of them on there where I give you a center and a point on the circle. So the center, we know how to deal with, right? But how do I find the length of the radius if I know the center and a point on the circle? Distance formula, which means you could use decimals, right? So you can use decimals for that, or the distance formula if you want.